Mark, and today I want to talk about King Charles and colonialism because the British Crown has a problem with the past. The sins of colonialism, above all the enslavement of millions of people, are a dark side of national history that has never been dealt with, not even by the royal family. You might have seen my video on the government already. No wonder then that the coronation of King Charles III cannot arouse great enthusiasm, especially among the ethnic minorities in the country. The polling institute YouGov found that 40% of them reject the monarchy and would prefer an elected head of state. And 49% of ethnic minorities think the royals have a race and diversity issue. I find it appalling, says Lester Holloway, that nobody has apologized for slavery. Holloway is the editor-in-chief of the Vies, the kingdom's largest African Caribbean newspaper. Any institution, including the royal family, that was caught up in the historical horrors of colonialism made no apology for slavery. That's what Holloway says. His newspaper has been fighting for this key demand for decades, but so far in vain. It is evident how much the royal family in particular and the kingdom in general benefited from the Atlantic slave trade. England owned the world's largest fleet of slave ships operating the infamous triangular trade between Africa, America, and the homeland. The Royal Africa Company was exclusively allowed to organize the slave trade and shipped Africans who had the RAC abbreviation branded on their chests to the New World then. The port of Liverpool was considered the slave trading capital with the world's largest slave market. It is estimated that up to 12 million African men, women, and children were trafficked to America between the 16th and the 19th century. The lucrative trade has made many Britons very wealthy. It is argued that this prosperity laid the foundation for the country's national rise since the start of the Industrial Revolution and its development into the largest empire in history. 2 years ago, the topic boiled to the surface again. Black Lives Matter demonstrations erupted across the country. Initially, there were solidarity actions to commemorate the death of the American George Floyd, but they quickly developed into protests against racism in their own country and, in particular, against the kingdom's colonial past. In Bristol, the statue of Edward Colston was ripped from its pedestal, wheeled through the city, and sunk in the harbor. Colston had been a 17th century slave trader who owned his fabulous wealth to the monopoly held by the Royal African Company, which he headed. In London, Winston Churchill's monument was spray-painted with the word racist. London Mayor Sadiq Khan had the statue of slave trader Robert Milligan dismantled. "It's a sad truth," said Khan, "that we owe a lot of our wealth to the slave trade, but we don't have to celebrate that in our public squares as well," he said. And the royal family tried to react. While still heir to the throne, Charles spoke at the Commonwealth Summit in Rwanda of the depth of my personal sorrow at the suffering of so many, and elsewhere of the horrible atrocities of slavery that forever stain our history. His tour to the Caribbean last year, the son Prince William expressed his dismay at the colonial sins, for which he wanted to express this profound sorrow. And slavery was abominable. It should never have happened. But these are personal words of regret, because the royals, be it the late Queen or members of the royal family, never managed to say sorry. Because sorry would have consequences. It's not just an expression of sympathy, but an admission of one's own guilt. Anyone who says sorry has to take responsibility, and that would mean, in the case of colonialism and slavery, reparations, compensation, and so on. The royals are not allowed to say the word sorry because it would have financial consequences for the nation. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak recently made it clear in Parliament that his country would not apologize for the slave trade. Unraveling our history is not the right way forward. However, after becoming king, Charles made a mark. The palace now supports historical research into royal involvement in the international slave trade. When the study is completed in 2026, the pressure is likely to increase for an official apology. For the chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, Sir Hilary Beckles, this is not happening fast enough. CARICOM, an association of Caribbean states, has long demanded reparations. The tensions between these states and royalty, says Beckles, can easily be diffused by the king if he pursues a path of redress. This begins with apology language and then develops into practical, everyday activities that promote Caribbean economic development. It is not expected to happen anytime soon, though. The coronation of the British monarch, King Charles III, takes place tomorrow. Many top-class guests are expected at the festive ceremony in Westminster Abbey. Among other things, you can look forward to the Swedish King Carl Gustaf and his eldest daughter, Crown Princess Victoria, as well as the Spanish royal couple Felipe and Letizia. However, the guest list also features two names that are causing controversy. This was reported by the British Daily Mail a while ago, but it fits in this topic now. Chinese Vice President Hang Zheng is expected to represent Xi Jinping at the coronation in London. Hang Zheng was responsible for arresting, injuring and killing scores of activists during the 2019 Hong Kong protests. As a result, British MPs condemned Beijing's decision to send Hang Zheng as disrespectful and outrageous. Buckingham Palace itself commented on the incident. He would not comment on the guest list, but said the king's relationship with China was particularly sensitive. In 1997, the United Kingdom handed Hong Kong back to China. A treaty stipulated that Hong Kong would have democratic freedom for 70 years after the handover. Before that, the British ruled Hong Kong for 155 years. Excerpts from Charles' diary are said to show that he described China's elite at the Times as a horrid old wax museum. In 2008, the then heir to the throne is said to have cancelled an invitation to the Olympic Games in Beijing because of criticism of the human rights situation in Tibet. British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly tried to calm things down in a speech earlier this week. Britain must work with China and maintain a constructive but robust relationship. And Michelle O'Neill, the leader of Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, also confirmed that she will attend the coronation, which I personally welcome. Northern Ireland's Prime Minister, she's not a Prime Minister, she's supposed to be First Minister. And she's an Irish Republican, but attending the coronation is the right thing to do, she says, and demonstrates her commitment to peace and reconciliation. Yeah, the First Minister thing. The DUP. What can I say about that? I said so much about that. But everybody here will be watching the coronation on television live the whole day. I'm quite sure about this. At least a large majority of the German population. That is something like we had a German emperor for a very short time. No one alive will remember him. And so people probably have a different view and a more fairy tale-like view on princesses and kings and queens and stuff like that. That might be the reason why so many Germans are interested in all the royal gossip. But a lot of people will watch it. But I'll have it running on my TV as well while I'm working on other videos for you. For example, on the Brexit game that's coming on May 15th to the Outside Views Games channel, this time only in English, because it's so much work in these games that I can only manage both languages once a month, but sometimes I bring another English version in mid-month, and this time it will be a Brexit game. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.